On the morning of March 11th, 2023, the quiet, close-knit village of Mary woke up to the tragedy of an 83-year-old granny found murdered in her sleep. Julia Gathoni had been beheaded and her head was missing. The only question that couldn't immediately be answered was who killed her and why. While her head has never been found over 2 years later, Murder Tapes can now answer, at least in part, the question of who killed the CWA member. Murder that tore a family apart, left a village living in fear, and a bungled police investigation that could reveal nothing. Tonight, we retrace the final hours of Julia Gathoni and follow a trail that points to a land dispute stretching over half a century. Land, lies, and a lost head. This is no ordinary murder story on a TV near you. This is Murder Tapes, where the truth is buried in the evidence. And so, it begins. For 83-year-old Julia Gathoni, the day before her murder passed like any other quiet village Saturday. Slow, familiar, and marked by the small rhythms of a life lived close to family. The morning found her seated on her favorite low stool just outside the kitchen door, wrapped in a knitted shawl to block out the soft Mukuruene chill. Her eyesight wasn't what it used to be, and her legs tired easily now. These days, she rarely walked long distances, but from that little spot, she could see everything that mattered. Her grandchildren running in and out of the homestead. The neighbor's cattle grazing behind the fence. And her own small herd shifting lazily near the banana grove. Every so often, she would call out to one of the children, asking them to watch the calf that had a habit of slipping through the fence, or reminding them not to wander too far down the footpath. You know, grandmothers, eh? The children loved hovering near her because she was gentle, she was full of stories, and she was full of laughter. Even in her frailty, she was the center of the home. Her daughter, Rose Ngujiri, moved in and out of the main house preparing lunch. Julia directed her the way elderly mothers do, with wisdom and with insistence on how to moderate the salt and the oil. Julia herself couldn't cook anymore. Her hands shook, and standing too long made her dizzy. But her daughter says she remained the authority in that kitchen. The family still relied on her sense of order. Later in the afternoon, some members of the local Catholic Women Association held a small planning meeting at the church center. Julia had wanted to attend. She always did. But the long walk had become impossible. Instead, she sat by the window listening to the faint, distant sounds of women singing a hymn as they gathered at that church. Julia stayed behind, watching the cattle, watching the sky shift toward evening, watching her grandchildren chase each other with tired laughter. As the sun dropped behind the ridge down in Mukuruene, she asked the children to bring in the chickens before dark. It was a simple day. There was nothing dramatic. There was nothing unusual. Just the quiet dignity of an elderly woman living out her routines, surrounded by the things she had spent her life building. Things like her home, her children, and her grandchildren. No one knew it was the last time they would hear her voice. That night, she retired early to her bed, as she always did.
Tulikuwa tunajitayarisha venye tutaenda shamba kwa sababu watoto walikuwa wamelala hapa, lakini kuna msichana mmoja aliniambia yeye atabaki akifua manguo. Huyo msichana akaamka, akachukua manguo zetu, kuenda kuchukua manguo ya shosho, ndiye alipata kama shosho pali alikuwa amelala kumejaa damu.
Julia Gathoni was not famous. She was not wealthy, maybe at heart. Neither was she powerful.
Since she was born, she has been a Catholic, yeah? Na amekuwa a staunch Catholic. And now, when even she got married, she got an innocent girl. Because she even was to go for a nun, eh? But then it changed when she met her lover. So she has been a church follower all through. Amekuwa kwa vikundi ya kanisa. Yes, she has been a good Christian. Yes. And a good member of CWA, Catholic Women Association.
She was just an ordinary grandmother and a farmer. To others, she was just a neighbor. A woman rooted to the same land that had raised her children and would, in the end, appear to be the cause of her own death.
Very innocent, a very humble woman. She has never hurt anybody in life. It has never, in history, even at my work, I've never had an issue with her. So everybody was so surprised. And in fact, there was worry in the area.
But what Julia didn't know was that a bitter land dispute had quietly turned her into a target. For years, tension had simmered over ownership of this piece of land. Arguments and threats from family members that would, in the years that followed, become heated court appearances. The disagreement was quite simple from the face of it. Just where was the boundary of the parcel of land from the adjacent one? See how simple that is. And who truly owned the land? Now, the bitter falling out was that the land now owned by Julia could belong to interested parties. But how, if she still was alive? This is the disagreement that refused to die.
Hiyo kesi iko kotini. Hiyo kesi bado inaendelea. Kuna resort zilishikwa, kuna vitu zilishikwa hiyo siku, DCI walikuja na wakafanya uchunguzi yao. Kuna vitu zilipelekwa, zilishikwa na zikapelekwa. Hiyo vitu hakuna hata moja sijaitokea tuambiwe ati huyu ndiye ameshikwa, kumesemekana sababu ya kuua ni na hii. Hatuwezi peana msimamo mzuri wa kusema ati shosho aliuawa juu ya hii kesi, hata kama hapo beleni tumeishi kuwa na kesi ya shamba. Hata bado haijaisha hiyo kesi ya shamba, bado inaendelea.
Kuna watu wanasema hii shamba ni
yao. Tunakuanga na mabishano ya baba yetu na mtoto wa baba. Tuko na hiyo kesi ya shamba.
Ati baba yenu
na baba ya hawa watoto wengine wa baba iniro ni muite baba mkubwa. Tunakuanga na kesi. Although hatuwezi sema kwa sababu hatujaijua haki kabisa.
Unajua hiyo ni kitu inakuwaka kwa every familia. Na sasa hapa, this lady has never been associated in the boundary thing because the husband akukufa mapema. So he just passed on maybe 3 or 4 years before the. Na sasa unajua kazi ya boundary with the brothers and sisters and whatever, that is a normal issue. It's a normal issue. So we never thought at any case that it concerned the land. It concerned, no. Because now the lady was very innocent. She never attempted to, hata wakati tumeenda hapo kutengeneza boundary, she had never been there. She had never complained about it. So it did not concern her at all. At all.
So kuna wakati mlianza kudili na the boundary.
Which is normal to separate two families. It was not a conflict. Yes. Ilikuwa the normal boundary, making a boundary to a brother and a brother. You know what happens? Always when it comes to putting a boundary, whether there is dispute or not, there is always a local administration. Yes. Kwa sababu lazima uwe hapo wasikorofane. Ati nimenyimwa shamba, nimepatiwa shamba kubwa, mwingine amenyimwa. We are always there.
Amidst all the chaos and fights, Julia or those close to her never imagined that someone could actually kill her. And not in such a cruel and gruesome manner. What started as a civil disagreement had quickly transformed into something far much darker. On the fateful night, Julia retired to bed as she had done thousands of times before. She locked her door, said a prayer, and went to sleep. At some time between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., someone managed to gain access to her house by turning the knob through this window. No scream was heard. No neighbor or grandchild woke up. And when morning came, Julia Gathoni had been beheaded in her sleep.
Tukarara vizuri masaa saa 4 usiku, lakini Jumamosi asubuhi tukiamka tukampata kama mama wetu ameuliwa na kishwa hana kishwa imeenda.
From the totality of things, the brutality was not just personal. It appeared, or so it was, symbolic. A terrifying statement, and it had actually been made.
Kulingana na penye mnaona huku kwetu, nyumba ya shosho alikuwa analala huku na mimi nilikuwa nalala huku na watoto wangu. Hiyo siku tukaamka mapema penye tu kulikuwa siku ya Jumamosi, tuliamka mapema kitu kama saa 12:30. Tulikuwa tunajitayarisha penye tutaenda shamba kwa sababu watoto walikuwa wamelala hapa, lakini kuna msichana mmoja aliniambia yeye atabaki akifua manguo. Huyo msichana akaamka akachukua manguo zetu, kuenda kuchukua manguo ya shosho, ndiye alipata kama shosho pale alikuwa amelala kumejaa damu. Akaniita, nilikuwa nyumbani jikoni. Akaniita akaniambia, "Auntie, naona kama pale shosho amelala kumejaa damu." Na mimi kutoka nikaenda kwa shosho kumwangalia, nikakuta ni ukweli hayuko ameuliwa. Kulikuwa saa 1 hivi asubuhi. Aliniita kwanza, wakati aliona aliniita, mimi ndio nilitoka kwenda, nilikuwa jikoni kwenda, nikaona ni ukweli, mimi ndio nilitoka nikipiga nduru. Alikuwa amelala vizuri, alikuwa amelala tu na alikuwa amefungwa na leso, alikuwa amefungwa pale chini kwa miguu, kafungwa hapa juu kwa kichwa. Hata sikuwa mara ya kwanza nimeamini hana kichwa. Lakini wakati nilirudi tena sasa nikaanza kumuita, nikimtingisa, nikamgusa, nikasikia kweli ameawa na hana kichwa. Alikuwa amefungwa tu na ile leso alikuwa amelala nayo hiyo usiku. Nadhani ndio alikuwa amemfungia hapa juu na hapa chini kwa miguu. Hakuna kitu tulisikia hiyo usiku. Hiyo mambo yote ikitendeka. Umbwa tu ndio tulisikia tu sikiguluma hiyo usiku, although zimesoea. Hadi wa leo tunasikianga maumba zimeguluma, zimenyamaza. Hivyo. Hakuna kitu tulisikia penye kunaendelea. Wasichana niko na wao, nilikuwa na wasichana. Hiyo siku hawakuwa wamelala kwa shushu. Sijui ni nini kwa sababu ni penye kulikuwa Friday. Kwa sababu weekdays mmoja alikuwa analala huku, mwingine tunalala naye huku chini, lakini hiyo siku walifanyia homework huku chini. Kwa hivyo wakati walimaliza homework, kwa sababu walikuwa wamekula sapa, huko tu ndio walilala.
When a man walked into a police station kilometers away in Naromoru and claimed to know a thing or two about the murder of Julia Gathoni, police were supposed to have kept him, interrogated him, and made use of every detail, every information that he provided. But they did not. Murder Tapes takes a short break.
In the days that followed, and even years later, fear spread faster than the facts of that murder. Those were now being locked earlier. Mothers held their children tighter and imposed curfews for older ones. Even strong men of the village, those feared on the road or in clubs, refused to walk alone at night. The village had become unsafe, at least in their minds.
Mood of many changed because there was fear all over. And now everybody would start thinking, why did this have to happen? Who did it? Where did this head go? Who is this person who had asked for the head of such an old woman?
As the village in Mukurweini laid back in darkness and watching the days pass by fast, an indicator that justice was fast becoming an illusion, something happened kilometers away in Naromoru. It was a name, Martin Mwangi. Now, Mwangi was not a stranger to the criminal justice system, leave alone the police station. Mwangi walked into a police station to confess to another murder. And in the process of confessing, he began to claim that he had killed Julia Gadoni, the 83-year-old grandmother. Now, let me take you back. You see, this Martin Mwangi is not a new man to the police. Martin Mwangi had once slipped through the fingers of justice. He was acquitted by Justice Teresia Matheka after being charged with the murder of his cousin James Mwangi Modhoni. The court lacked evidence. Martin then walked out a free man, a quiet man, a man no one imagined carried storms inside him. And you see, investigations did not just lead him to the murder of his cousin. He initiated those investigations by first walking into a police station and confessing to the crime that happened in Kiambogo village in Endarasha. And by the way, I wonder how the court could see no evidence here, because it was on the same 22nd day of August 2017 that Mwangi walked into Nyeri Central Police Station and spoke to Chief Inspector Mwakisha. That was about 2 p.m. Chief Inspector Mwakisha, unable to believe that a man had walked to him and confessed to a murder with no proper reason, Mwakisha phoned Chief Inspector Eros Nyongesa. The Chief Inspector Mwakisha told Nyongesa that there was a suspect who had surrendered himself, claiming that he had killed his cousin at Endarasha and dumped his body near his homestead. That the suspect had also surrendered a mobile phone Mac TKK that was orange in color, which he claimed before Mwakisha that was his cousin's phone. Mwakisha wanted Nyongesa to confirm if there had been a murder in his locality. And Nyongesa confirmed it. There was nothing to show that Martin Mwangi was lying. But Lady Justice Teresia Mumbua Matheka acquitted him because, in her own words, the investigating officer did no investigations of his own, apart from putting details together and bringing the same before court. Also because a report showing that Martin Mwangi was fit to stand trial after failing a similar psychiatric test was not tabled before court. Months later, another storm broke. Well, I'm talking about months after Martin Mwangi confessed to killing his cousin. He then murdered his employer, Stephen Ngari. Again, he walked into yet another police station and confessed. he wasn't trembling. He did not panic. He was just unburdened. And when he spoke, officers had a man who remembered everything. The angle of the blows, the sequence of events, the tiniest details only a killer would know. Such is the man who went into Naromoru police station and confessed to the killing.
Halikati ya kupiga shami niliingia, nikamwambia mzee nimekuja. Aniuliza kwani wewe kuenda? Kwenda kumaliza sijui mzee alienda kuinama kukuliza moto hivi. Nizukia tu kashuma akakupulizia moto. Fiti mbili hivi. Fiti mbili hivi. Nikamgonga ya moja kichwa. Kakaa kana zirai. Akaibayumba. Akaanguka. Akienda tu kuaruka. Nikampiga chuma ya pili, chuma la tatu. Mzee akazirai. Then toka hapo nifanya huyu mtu hajaishi. Na hapa sababu ni kitchen. Kuna watu wanakuja pengine kuchukua maziwa asubuhi. Wacha tu kwa maridhiano mko private, niba private kidei. Ibidi tu nishike yule yake nikamburuta. Kwa tiboro. Toka pande ya tiboro nikaweka kifuli, nikafunga na kifuli. Nikazunguka mlango wa nyuma. Nikaingia mlango wa nyuma. Lakini ndamu ilikuwa inamwalika between kitchen na tiboro. Kachukua mchanga nikaandika. Nikabua mlango wa nyuma nikaingia na nikafunga ndani. Mzee bado anafika tu duru ile ya mkeo. Yeah. Nilienda tu nikamwongeza shuma, nikaendelea tu kumpiga na shuma. Shuma karibu 10 bakisho.
Psychiatrists would later declare him mentally unstable. But madness does not erase memory. Insanity does not fabricate facts. And there was no doubt that Martin was telling the truth about the deaths he owned. Then, unexpectedly, right there, he opened the door to another murder. And here is where I would like you to listen carefully. Martin began to speak to police officers at the Naromoru police station about the killing of the grandmother in Nyeri, Julia Gathoni, a grandmother beheaded in her sleep. A murder that had fractured families and ignited whispers across the ridges. Martin spoke about Julia as he confessed to killing Stephen Ngari. And these were not the only murders he had admitted to.
Ataliwa mzungu, alishaua relative huko kwa Muiga. Na kurudi kama kuna mtu alikoni huko kwa forest 300,000 alikuwa ana confess pia. Kuna Mukurweine aliua mama mkogwe huko sijui nyanya wa miaka 80. Hiyo ni vitu imekuwa kwa media everywhere. Na wakabeba kichwa, alikuwa na confess, walikubeba kichwa wakapeleka sijui Matanya na huku zaidi za nani, those places around na Nyuki area, those things. So aliconfess ameua watu kama 7 na alikuwa amesema hata ua tena. Huyu ndiye alikuwa anataka kuwa mwisho, huyu Stephen. Sasa
Martin described it with the same chilling clarity. The house, the night, the men he claimed were hired by a timber businessman, the role each of them played. Yet suddenly, the police flinched. While Martin named all these people and their involvement, police would arraign a suspect on Martin's word. The court in Mukurweini then set him free. Protests broke out following this acquittal.
So the tension was very high. I had to make an application that my client be escorted to where he comes from.
The people of Meere village and the larger Mukurweini couldn't understand that there was a small rift between the law and emotions and their love for Julia Gathoni.
Kuna watu walishikwa na mmoja tukasikia ameshikwa akijitanja ati yeye ndiye amefanya kesi ya huku, na akashikwa akaletwa hadi huku polisi ya kwetu hii ya Mukurweini, na akasema yeye ndiye aliua huku, na akaelezea penye walikuwa wanatembea, penye walikuja, penye kwa shosho kunakaa kila kitu, na tukachukua hatua tukiwa watu wa kijiji na watu wale wametusungukia, tukaenda hadi kotini Mukurweini pale alikuwa ameshikiwa. Kwenda kotini, jaji akasema huyo mtu kunafaa achiliwe, hata kama atakuwa anaachiliwa na anakuja kuripoti, kwa sababu hakujajulikana vizuri kabisa ati kama ni yeye ameua. Tukaulizia tukasikia ati jaji alisema mwenye alikuwa amemtanja ni kama kichwa yake ni baya, ni kama mtu analukwa na wazimu, anatokewa na wazimu. Lakini tunajiuliza tukiwa kama family na watu wa kijiji, huyu mtu anaelezea vizuri sana penye walikuja, penye walifanya, na penye walipata shosho akiwa amelala. Ni mtu wako na wazimu kweli, na anajua kila kitu na penye kuliendelea. Hiyo kitu inatusangaza sana.
Anasema walikuja wakiwa watu wangapi?
Walikuwa watu 3.
Na
anawasema na majina alikuwa anasema.
Na hao watu wako wana exist, ni watu mnajua?
Hatuwajui. Isipokuwa ni huyo mmoja alikuwa amekuja hapa Mukurweini kotini, huyo tutasema ni huyu, lakini hatumjui sana kwa sababu alikuwa ametoka Bali. Ni watu walikuwa wametumwa kutoka Bali, tulikuwa tunasikia ni wapande ya Nalumono.
Wakati tulisikia kuna jamaa ameprofesai, ati amesema ati ni part of, ati alikuwa ametumwa akuja achukue kichwa ya Julia, hata ni aliua ule mama wa Mukurweini. In fact ila mtu akasema wow, so at the end of it all tutapata the main suspect. Yes. And we thought now hata everybody was relieved because the statement which had been taken, it was just involving the family members. There was totally no suspect. Yeah. And now we thought already amejileta juu ya maombi ya watu, kwa sababu watu waliomba sana na watu waliuliza Mungu maswali, why this innocent lady, old lady, yeah? Waliulizana maswali mingi sana. Yes. So when this man said that he knew he was the person who came and carried the head of this lady, everybody felt we are better relieved now that the person does not come from the family. The person does not come from our community. He was from, and maybe you'll know who wanted now this head.
You see, the bigger question was, why believe Martin fully in 2 murders, but question him in the 3rd? Why trust his word when it tied him to Stephen Ngari, yet doubt him when it could expose a network bigger than one broken man? That's why I sought to find Advocate Alexander Mushangi, who represented the family of Julia in that matter. Alexander's view, which Murder Tapes regrets to share, is that instead of using Mwangi's confession as a map, investigators chose to make him the centerpiece of a case that felt hurried, incomplete, and almost uncertain.
Despite, yes, the one who informed the police about this particular suspect being unstable, there was no clear indication that the police did really investigate this suspect. There was no, indication that they took his data, phone data, back to the date when the murder happened. There was no indication that they tried and link that data with the data of the convict who confessed to the murder. So I believe those were among the reasons why there was really that discomfort or feeling dissatisfied with how that thing was handled.
Mushangi's words are echoed by city advocate Isabella Obara. Well, I knew Isabella when she used to work at the Independent Medical Legal Unit. Now she operates a law firm in Nairobi.
My take would have been that the investigative team picks this person as a lead for a start. And I say this bearing in mind that this confession was given voluntarily there was no coercion, and has not been given only once. It's been several times. However, you marry that with a psychological report and assessment. We cannot say that that their mental state is not important to any form of trial and confession. That is quite important, indicating that you are arraigning a person, one who you are not sure can stand trial, is ideally just thwarting justice for the victims who've lost their loved ones. Here we are presented with what we'd call a simple case, specifically because we have everything. I think it's just a few bolts and knots to be tied, especially with the investigating body. There's very little the court can do other than to send this person for a psychological assessment. And ideally, if they're not mentally capable, their confession cannot stand. Their confession cannot stand. So once you have that report and it confirms that they are mentally capable, then you have everything with you. You will have proper leads, you will have tools, tips and tricks to find the other people that he had worked with, and you can also establish a few things, mens rea, and some of those other key things that a prosecution then needs to prove, because the standard of proof in a criminal matter is normally obviously higher than in other forms of litigation.
Of course, from a police perspective, it should be, because it is not the person who gave you the information. It's about how you use that information. Because if you use that information to lead you, whether you will call that person as a witness or not is another thing. Because the information can lead you to even more evidence. It can lead you to the murder weapon. It can lead you to where the head was taken. So that is now why I'm saying the family was dissatisfied. Because yes, the person giving the information can be unreliable legally, which is true. But now, how about the information and how do you use it? Because if it leads you to more evidence, then it's reliable information. We don't need to know how you got the information.
In the world of murder tapes, this is where the investigation tilts. Martin's confession became an inconvenience. His truth threatened the community more than the killer himself. And at that moment, the system seemed to step carefully, not towards justice, but around something or someone only they know. The answer may lie not in his mind, but in the ones of those who needed Julia dead. Mwangi told police he was hired. He named a conspiracy. He spoke of a team assembled for one mission, the mission to eliminate Julia Gathoni. And instead of investigators expanding the case, they decided he was simply insane. And with that label, that he was insane, the confession lost value and the trail went cold. The truth was lost at that moment. Julia Gathoni would then be laid to rest, without her head, without full dignity, and without justice.
In fact, it was very difficult. We made several meetings with the family members because they thought they would not bury the mother without now the head or the shosh or whoever. But now we involved several persons doing counseling to the members of the family, bringing them on board without now anybody else trying to talk to them, because now the body still was accumulating in the mortuary and there was totally no hope of getting now the head. And now they thought they can't have two burials because they can't bury the body. Then when the head is got, they bury the other part of the body. So talking to this family, it even costed some of us, because we went as far as getting people talking to the family now to just own the body as it was. And in fact, ilikuwa ni kazi ngumu. But now at long last, the decision was made and she was buried.
The same land that had started it all now covered her forever.
The only thing that has moved in the quiet hills of Mukurweini is time, but justice has not. Julia Gathoni's killers walked through her homestead with the confidence of men who believed the law would never touch them, and somehow they were right. From the night she was murdered and her severed head vanished without a trace, every step has exposed the cracks in the system. What was so hard about the DCI following the leads from Martin Mwangi's confession, pinging locations, following money trails, and seeking to find the whereabouts of Julia Gathoni's head? There, it won't matter that he was mentally unstable. The evidence would have led to other principal offenders. Murder Tapes submits tonight without flinching that until police nail who killed Julia and why, this case remains a reminder of how slippery the law can be. I'm Brian Obuya. Thanks for watching. Good evening.